Okay, let's talk about Mars going retrograde on the 31st of October. So, quite a few things to say. Now, first of all, I'm going to unpack it from the point of view of the evolution of the soul, right? Because I am. And the reason for that is because Mars is such a important planet relative to the soul's will and evolution, and what the soul is actually trying to experience. Mars is about action. So if you think about Pluto as being the infinite source of the soul, and the soul incarnates into the physical body, takes on the persona. The sun is a major component of the expression, right, of the soul. So is the moon. So is every planet, really. But Mars specifically points to that drive and will. Pluto, being the soul, is the ultimate will, the ultimate willpower of what the soul is intending to create and experience, but it does that through the assistance of all the other planets, as it were, right? And Mars particularly is the agent of taking action towards things in our life, right, at any time. Mars is a yang principle or energy. It's masculine, it's yang. It exerts, it pushes energy out, it goes into life, acts into situations, takes on action, decides on what it's going to do, so on and so forth. But Mars is not a planet that has sort of pre-thought, if you like, right? It doesn't, it operates from a deeply instinctual position. So its natural mode of operation is to act out of its instincts, whatever those instincts are, right? Whatever it's sort of feeling into, right? So it's an interesting thing because Mars going retrograde is the complete sort of unnatural position for Mars to be in. Mars is a planet that creates energy, speed, desire, passion. It operates from instincts. It has that urge to go and do whatever it wants to do. So if you can imagine Mars have to go retrograde, which it is, which every planet does, and in this particular instance, it goes retrograde on the 25th degree of Gemini, picks up that square to Neptune that I've already spoken about, so I won't unpack that again, and stays in Gemini till, what is it, about March next year. So it's in Gemini for quite a long time. So Mars is going to feel a lot of frustration being retrograde because its natural mode of operation is to charge out, to charge into something, to just be and act, right, on impulse, on instincts. The retrograde journey is a process of reflection, patience, withdrawing, contemplation, reflecting, standing back, not really about acting as much, although we can make very important decisions during retrograde periods, but that's because we have reflected greatly on certain matters and therefore we've either changed our mind or made up our mind about a particular situation. So Mars being retrograde is a frustrating journey for Mars, and it's going to be a big test to our will, the soul's will. And another way to understand it is that, well, actually, Pluto went direct just yesterday, right? And so let me just mention a couple of things about that without going into great lengths of that at the moment, because I'll come back and probably do a separate video on Pluto turning direct. But this is an important component here relative to Mars, because Mars and Pluto are the planets of will. Pluto is the soul's will, Mars is the individual will, right? So Pluto changed direction to go direct, right? Now, that happened on the 26th degree of Capricorn. And so that direct movement of Pluto that has just begun is not something that we're first of all going to feel immediately, right? Pluto is going to be on the 26th degree of Capricorn until the 10th of December. That's about 8 weeks. 8 weeks on the same 1 degree. So it's indicative of, it's like Pluto's at the waiting bay, and it's just sort of still waiting before it, picks up that momentum and starts to direct itself. And that'll happen really when it changes into the 27th degree. So I just wanted to mention that, because some people are of the view that now that Pluto's gone direct, I can feel it already. It's perhaps maybe some people can to an extent, but realistically, Pluto's on the same degree for 8 weeks. There's still a very slow motion around Pluto. So we've got the soul's will, Pluto, change direction, but slowly gearing up towards changing from 26 to 27 degrees. These changes, right, from 1 degree to the next, when a planet changes directions, either retrograde or direct, are very significant. If a planet is going to be on the same degree for 8 weeks, while it's actually not direct, while it's actually not retrograde or stationary, it's just kind of slowly moving, that's a pretty important implication there. There's something still, it's like Pluto's kind of generating the momentum, right, to get moving, right, which is going to be the journey of completing the last degrees of Capricorn. Think about it. It's going to go to the 27th degree. It's going to move even further than that. And then eventually next year it's going to go into Aquarius. So there's something huge happening with the change of direction of Pluto, but the process is not as fast as perhaps some people think it is. Mars changes directions soon on the 31st, end of this month, October, and goes the other way, right? The opposite way to where Pluto is going. Mars is going direct, Mars is going retrograde, Pluto is going direct. So that's an interesting kind of conundrum there, as it were, relative to what these two planetary archetypes speak to, which is will, our own Mars, individual will, Pluto, the soul's will. The ultimate position from an evolutionary perspective about Mars and Pluto is that the soul is expressing through the will of Mars. And the way it does that, it's that sense of, I need to act in this way. I need to go and do this. I need to create this. I need to take action towards this. Most of it is unconscious. Pluto is driving it. And where there can be some matters that come up where people experience, how can I put it? Perhaps uncertainty, or not being clear about what's going on and why, not feeling like things are kind of working out. And that's partly because if Mars is not aligned with Pluto consciously, there's not a conscious wanting to and trying to integrate the two, so the actions that I decide to take, the things that I decide to do, are congruent with what my soul actually desires for my evolution. When I'm not doing that, then Mars is out there doing his own thing. Sometimes that doesn't necessarily mean disaster, but it can do. When we are projecting that Mars in an unconscious manner without it being consciously directed from alignment to the soul, then there can be things like the rampage that occurred in Thailand, for instance. That's a very extreme example, I know, but it's just to demonstrate how powerful the individual will and personality can be at any given moment. So Mars going retrograde is letting us know that we kind of that the energy has to be pulled back into ourself, right? And we have to find a way to get it more closely aligned and connected to our soul's will, not what our personality and individual will wants just for itself, but what is the soul's intentions and purpose around the actions that I'm taking? How do those actions that I take bring me to a closer alignment with my soul's intention? That's kind of like the test that Mars will be going through for the next few months while it's retrograde and in Gemini for a very long time. The process will be, there'll be, the initial sense will be perhaps frustration because Mars can't plunge forth and take charge in the way that it normally does because it's retrograde. Well, it will be retrograde. And so it's forced to sort of take a step back and look at that energy within and contemplate within everything that I'm wanting to act on and everything that I'm wanting to do and why I'm wanting to take action towards that. You know, that the why is important, right? Because Mars, by its very nature, doesn't think like that. It doesn't think about the why and the how. It just does. It just acts. It's Mars. It rules Aries, rules Scorpio as well, yes. But the nature of Mars is about our instinctual impulses and action, our individual will. And sometimes the act of that can save our life. We could be in a dangerous situation that if it wasn't for our instincts and impulse to act very quickly, a very simple example that's not gruesome, you're walking across the road and a car is coming and it doesn't see you, and you acted so quickly to get out of the way that's your Mars instincts kicking in, warning you of danger, as it were, where you were able to remove yourself because you were able to act on your instincts and impulses so quickly. That's just a simple example, but an important one, right? So have a look at where Mars is transiting in Gemini in your chart, because obviously that's the field that's going to be activated and highlighted with this retrograde in Gemini. And have a look at if it's forming any aspects to any planets in your chart that are in the mutable signs. So Virgo, Pisces, Gemini, Sag, the 4 mutable signs, right? Because Mars will either be conjunct your Gemini planets, opposite your Sagittarius planets, square your Virgo planets, and square your Pisces planets. And the range of degrees you can look at is from about 20 to 30 degrees of Gemini. You've got planets in those 4 mutable signs between 20 and 30, then this Mars retrograde cycle in Gemini, picking up a square to Neptune, is going to bring some matters up for you over the next few months that are going to be quite critical, actually. Again, you know, the frustration component will be felt in different ways for different people, depending on, you know, some people are more, I suppose we could say, generally speaking, men are more Mars type individuals as such. And so the masculine energy, which is the natural inherent masculine frequency, is to act, to take action on things. So the whole world is going to have to kind of slow down in a certain way with this Mars being retrograde in Gemini. And some people will experience it in conflicting ways, you know, that can be lots of conflicting matters relative to communications because it's in Gemini, conflicting information, conflicting data, conflicting communications, some confusion there as well, some deception, perhaps Mars square Neptune. Mercury's been opposite Neptune, forming a T-square to Mars. This is all just before Mars is going to go retrograde. So there's a few themes there that are sort of picking up this energy of what Mars will kind of show us over the next few months. And also pay attention to, from around about the 20th of October till about the 10th of November, Mars is, based on a particular method, Mars is stationary during that time. So from the 20th of October to the 10th of November, there's not a lot that's going to be happening from that Mars level. You might be wanting to really push ahead on something, and you're going to feel this sense of frustration if you're not able to take a step back and have a look at what's being asked of you to really reflect on, right? From the point of view of why do I want to take these actions? What is this leading me to? Now, for people that are not, working consciously on that evolutionary level and are just wanting to do the Mars thing, I think those people will feel the frustration even more because they won't have the understanding or awareness of this is an asking of the soul's will to be consciously more integrated with the individual will. Why is that important, and why does that even happen? Because as we evolve, evolution speaks to learning, right? Developing and growing. So Mars acting out on his own, he's not about the soul, and he's not about integrating into the will. He's into what he wants and when he wants it, and how he's going to get it. That's how Mars operates. So Pluto's energy brings in that factor of, well, if I can understand what my soul really wants me to grow into, develop further, so that I'm, more conscious of the actions that I'm taking. I know why I'm taking this action. I know kind of what the result is going to be. I understand that the purpose for that. I'm not just kind of acting out of complete impulse and complete unawareness. I have a very specific desire from the soul level, right? Look, in evolutionary astrology, there are what's called separating desires, and then the remerging back to source. The separating desires, Mars is a primary facilitator towards separating desires. What are separating desires? They are experiences that the soul is intending to experience, which do take it further away from the soul, but that's because it needs to have those experiences, because then those experiences feed back to the soul what it intended, what it wanted to learn, what it needs to learn. That's why there's no such thing as good or bad, right or wrong. The most common question I get from people when I speak about something is that good or is that bad? If life was so simple, we'd have a lot more answers to a lot of unanswered things. There's a huge element to life that is beyond our control. A lot of people don't like to admit that or acknowledge that or are even aware of that, but that is a fact, because the unconscious component within us drives about 85% of our behavior. So that's an out of control experience. It's the soul directing it. So Mars Pluto is about two aspects of will being aligned and integrated, so that when I am taking action towards this or action towards that, there is some kind of reason and purpose behind it. I understand why I'm doing that. And I understand that by taking this action, I am having a particular experience that my soul is intending. I just want to read a couple of comments as well from this section here. So the retrograde principle is it wants to introvert, right? It internalizes, goes within, right? It's always the case with retrograde planets. Doesn't matter what planet it is. It matters from the point of view of understanding how that retrograde journey is going to be based on that planet, because Mars is probably one of the most difficult planets to be going retrograde. It really is. You know, most of the other planets wouldn't be as difficult as Mars, particularly because Mars is an ego planet. It's the individual will. So it's like telling a Gemini to be quiet. That's the worst thing you can do to a Gemini, to tell them to shut up and not speak. Telling Mars to slow down is the worst thing, so to speak, right? It's the most unnatural, incompatible, uncomfortable position for a planet like Mars to be in, to just slow down and not act out of its impulse and instincts. Instead, to turn the energy within and somehow find a way to really channel that energy in a way that you still have some physical outlet, right? Because Mars needs a physical outlet always, whether it's direct or whether it's retrograde. But the activity relative to choices that bring about very specific actions and results with very specific purposes are something that need to be heavily considered and contemplated when Mars is retrograde. You can't just go out and do that for no apparent reason, as it were. You know, well, that's kind of the calling, you know, from an evolutionary level, right? Okay. I just wanted to read this last paragraph here. So a key understanding for Mars retrograde is that it inverts the consciousness of the soul so that it can determine the cause, the why of any given desire that the soul has, which is really what I was just explaining the last 10 minutes. You know, when Mars goes retrograde, because that energy is inverted, it comes closer to the soul, and there's this kind of sense of being able to work with my own individual will, aligning with my soul will, so that I can have the answers to the why this, the why that, why am I doing this, what is the purpose of that, you know, and so forth, right? As a result, the soul, when Mars is retrograde, is desiring to eliminate all unnecessary desires that have nothing to do with what the needs of nothing to do with what the soul needs by way of its ongoing evolutionary journey. Now, that's a very, very important statement. So I'll just read that again. As a result, the soul, when Mars is retrograde, is desiring to eliminate all unnecessary desires, which is again what I was saying before about separating desires, right? That's what he's talking about here. I'm actually referencing Jeffrey Wolf Green, in case you were wondering. So because we have these separating desires which take us out into the world to experience different things, when Mars turns retrograde, it brings it into a space of awareness of, because of the reflective process of the different sort of desires that I can now eliminate. I don't need to act on those desires. You know, I'm finished with that kind of behavior. I'm finished with that journey. I'm finished with acting like that in this way. I don't need that anymore. I've outgrown it. I'm bringing Mars closer, my individual will, to my soul will. That's basically what he's talking about there. So Mars going retrograde enables us to identify what separating desires we don't need to act on anymore. So you can see how powerful Mars retrograde is going to be, right? He says, and this includes inverting the natural sexual energy of the soul to determine the reason or the why of any given sexual desire that is perceived as a need. So same principle again, except in this case, he's referencing it to our sexual energy. Now, I did a video on Vesta just a day or so ago, which is also an archetype that corresponds to our sexual energy and how we might use that for spiritual development and elevation, as it were. Well, we can do the same thing with Mars. We just need to bring in that awareness of how we are using that sexual force and sexual energy and why, right? So the retrograde process enables us again to reflect on those levels as well, those matters connecting to our sexual energy. Now, whether that's being engaged sexually with a person or people, it can be that, or it can just be how you are channeling your own sexual energy in a productive way that enables you to utilize that energy for powerful purposes of your personal spiritual development and growth, right? It's consciously focused and intended. That's what Mars retrograde has the ability to invoke in us, right? Then he says, as a result, the soul will desire to eliminate or change anything in its life that no longer has anything to do with what the soul actually needs to continue on its evolutionary journey. So again, it's just a very similar statement to what he said above, and more or less what I've been talking about the last 20 minutes or so. Mars going retrograde enables us to have greater clarification about our desires, our passion, the actions we want to take, why we want to take them. And it helps us identify and therefore eliminate what we don't need to act on anymore, right? So that separating desire, meaning that action that I've been taking towards this situation or person or experience, whatever, for my whole life or for the last month or for the last couple of years, I've learned from that. I've grown from that. I have much more awareness and clarity of what that behavior produces in my life and what it produces in other people's lives. And so through that awareness, I can decide now that this action, separating desire, this action no longer serves the evolution and growth of my soul. I've outgrown it, in other words, right? That's basically what he's talking about. In the process of eliminating anything that has led to the soul's current state of reality, the soul will reflect exactly what it does need, what it does desire to move forwards on that journey. So he's just saying that in the process of identifying which separating desires you no longer need to act on, you also in that process recognize what actions, what desires of the soul are important, that will enable you to grow further, that will lead you further into your path of evolution, right? So it's a recognition of what you don't need and what you do need, relative to Mars and individual will and the soul will. This is what I need to grow, this is what I need to do to keep developing as a soul, as a person. And this is what I don't need this anymore. I'm done with that. I'm finished with that. I'm clear about it. It's not about being angry about it or hating it or suppressing it, because then you haven't understood it at all. You're only, when we have a hate or an anger towards something, it's completely unresolved within ourselves. When we are resolved about something and we've grown through it and we have a greater sense of understanding, we don't have a reaction to it. We are just able to observe it objectively and then make an objective decision, a clear decision that I don't need that anymore. I don't need to do that anymore with any hard feelings. It's an important distinction, right? Thus, this can be a time of creating new and intensified desires to that end. So during the Mars retrograde process, when we have the awareness of the separating desires, actions, behaviors, I don't need those things anymore. I don't need to behave in that way anymore, act in that way anymore, etc. When we realize that and realize at the same time, but I do need to work on this more, develop this more, take action towards this area of my life in this particular way. So I can see both. I can see what I need, what I don't need. And then the third level is I also have a transformative experience inside me and give birth to new desires, which are coming from the soul. They're not new to the soul because the soul holds everything. It knows everything. It sees everything. But they are new from the point of view of what you are now ready in your own life to step towards with your individual will. So these new desires that are born during this retrograde process are messages from the soul, letting you know you're ready for this next chapter. You're ready for this next level. You're ready for this new journey now. And here's those new desires that will create that impulse, that life force, that desire, that passion, and that will to facilitate your journey towards those desires. So those are the main considerations that I have to offer for today. And all those considerations, which I feel carry tremendous depth if you really contemplate those ideas and feel into them and embody them and work with those ideas and principles in your own individual way, because that's how it's going to be for all of us. We will do it in our own unique individual way based on our life script and our life story and where we are right now. There's a lot that you can really gain from this Mars retrograde journey relative to your soul's growth. But at the external personality level, there's going to be some frustrations and some hiccups and some bit of turbulence, right? And so it's up to us how much we step into that field of our soul's desires and whether our individual desires match up with that, line up with that. When they line up with that, it will feel organic. You will feel a process of integration that's natural and that just unfolds and develops. That's not to say that there's no challenges with that, but there's no resistance, and that's the key. There's no resistance. So I'll leave that with you, and happy full moon, by the way, it's today. Yeah, be interested to see what sort of further unfolds over the next couple of days, because it just sort of really kicks in today, and there's already been some pretty heavy stuff going on in the world, as I've mentioned in the previous couple of videos. And you know, we're in the midst of the Scorpio solar eclipse, which I'll come back and talk about. But you know, I'm thinking, you know, Scorpio solar eclipse, meaning nodes in Scorpio Taurus. Shortly we'll have, well, after the Venus star point, which I need to come back and talk about that too. Venus star point ingressing into Libra after 150 years, massive turning point collectively. Then after that, you know, we're going to have Scorpio season kick in, right? So there's going to be a lot of Scorpio stuff floating around because it's going to be Scorpio season, and we've got a Scorpio solar eclipse. So I think there's a lot of matters around power, our own personal power, abuse of power, money, you know, finances, personal finances, shared finances. Those themes are all extremely highlighted at these times, you know, and particularly with Uranus in Taurus as well. So there's a lot to unfold, you know, really for the rest of this year, because Saturn square Uranus is more or less exact at the moment. We're seeing the final curtain close of what that cycle has meant, which has been in play for a year and a half. Pluto has just gone direct. Saturn is going to go direct. I think Uranus doesn't go direct till next year. Yeah, Uranus goes direct. It is next year. Chiron goes direct in December. Neptune in December. Jupiter in November. So I think we're going to see enormous movement in a lot of ways, you know, over the next few months. But the Mars retrograde is going to have a big say on just how we direct our will and our energy moving forward, with the rest of the planets changing direction, because they will have their own meaning and pathway, right? And I'll come back and talk about Saturn direct and Pluto direct soon. But Mars underpins so much about all those planets, because whatever the remainder of the planets reflect for us, a lot of it is based on the sort of action that we take about things in our life, and that's Mars, and here he is going retrograde. So it's really interesting and really powerful, especially for individual and soul will integration, congruence, alignment, embodiment, for personal self-empowerment, personal self-directed conscious energy and action, being aligned with instincts and will from the higher level. You know, there's pretty powerful implications here with this Mars retrograde. So I'll leave it there, and I'll see you guys very soon. Much love and star blessings. And I just wanted to say, I've noticed YouTube has added where you get underneath any video, not just mine, any video, you get the option to like a video, to share it, to download it. They've recently just put a love heart with a $ in it, and I've clicked on that because I had no idea what it was, and it enables people to donate basically to you know, the video that they're viewing. So I just wanted to say, you know, if you really do love my work and you really appreciate the time and energy that I give freely, because I do give it freely, and you want to show some appreciation, then don't be shy to hit the love heart thanks $ button and, you know, donate something towards the service that I offer. You know, that would be also appreciated. So I noticed, I'll name you, John. I won't say the surname, but an individual called John has donated through the last 4 videos. So thank you so much. And yeah, very much appreciated. See you guys soon. Bye for now.